Hi, folks. You're with Tassus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you. Thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about probably a silly event more than a noteworthy event that occurred in a Spanish university, or two universities, a Spanish university. Now, the allegation is that I think this happened. I don't think there's much dispute over it, but the allegation is there's some huge anti-female, misogynistic, Nazi, fascist, oppressor, evil men, and so on event. Now, what it is, and this goes on. If you're familiar with sort of Spanish and Latin type behaviour, then and attitudes and social interactions, then you'll see this sort of thing as being not good or bad or anything, but rather a silly, as Anglos would see it, rather a silly sort of set of behaviours that is more ritualistically silly than anything else. But and I'll come back and explain more about that. But the issue is this, that in a Spanish university, and they're divided into two universities, the male university and the female university, and there's quite a large courtyard separating the dormitories or the students that live in from the two genders. So men on one side, or boys, young men on one side, young women on the other. So now, the allegation, or not allegation, it's captured on film. But what happens is the boys at an anointed time all go to the windows of their it's quite a tall building, of their dormitory, and they sort of yell out sexual innuendo type utterances to the girls in the other side, who were also, by the way, at the windows with open windows and open curtains, waiting for this moment. Now, this went sort of international, this thing, and clearly it's a tightly coordinated media and government, NGO, student activist bodies. It's a tightly coordinated campaign, and so they're ready for this moment and it sprang the trap instantly, and to show that there's all these evil, wicked male misogynists that are oppressing women, and they're fascists, they're Nazis, they're misogynists, they're purely evil, and this has to be stamped out. Radical action is required. Radical action is required to stamp out these fucking fascist Nazis, these men, these straight men they're causing this trouble, and the women are oppressed everywhere because of this. And if one woman is oppressed, all women are oppressed. These fucking Nazis, Hitler. And something has to be done. Radical action is required. New laws are needed. Arbitrary arrest is required. So the hysteria was typical. Now, if you if you go online to look for stories about this, media stories, the only stories you will see are all heavily slanted in one direction. Now, it doesn't matter whether you look at the international news networks or the usual suspects like The Guardian and the BBC in Britain and so on. They're all it could be that the one story's all been scripted from the same source. You say one person sat down and written this, and it's a very activist document, ticking all the boxes about they're fascists and they're oppressors and they're Nazis, and the typical rollout. And again, very, very one-sided, just going completely in one direction with nothing else there. So it's not a news story. It's a blatant propaganda piece that all the news networks are using at the same time. And again, tightly coordinated. The NGOs, they're all there, tightly coordinating and stage managing this story or this narrative. And if you do the search online, it was sort of 2/3 the way down the second page. And I've got 25, I think it is, on the 30, 25 or 30 on the first page of the searches. So by the time it was story number approximately story number 50 or 40s, somewhere in the 40s, before I got anything that was even slightly objective. So that just goes to show how much Google and these outfits are in on the game, to make sure that you only see the activist propaganda narrative, that you only see that. And if you're just somebody sort of, I wonder what this is all about, let me check, you'd come away with, that's terrible. Oh, these boys are going, and there was somebody said they heard a young man calling out, "Hey, whores, how about a fuck," or something like that. Now there's a common sort of Spanish phrase that pretty much everybody uses, and is in English you might call someone a bastard or an idiot or a dickhead or that sort of thing, but so it's a common phrase or common word that's used, and in Spanish, everyone's a puta, a prostitute. Everyone's a prostitute. That's just how it. Men too, and it's just a sort of a casual common put there. Nobody means it, or it's not meant to mean that you are. It's just one of those sort of slang casual words that's thrown around on the street. But so when these young men are mentioning this, they're pretending that they're calling all these women whores, the oppressors, the fucking fascists, and to an Anglo audience, for anyone outside of that Spanish diaspora, well, gee, that's a bit much, isn't it? Why would they call these young women whores? It's because they want to use them for sex, because they're fucking misogynists. If they're misogynists, they're fucking Nazis, they're fascists, damn fascists. Put them all in prison. Re-education is needed. Where are those North Korean dictators when you need them? So it's a very one-sided. Now, what they fail to mention is that the girls were catcalled in the dormitory across the square. The girls were catcalling back again. So there was quite a vigorous exchange of sentiments there from both sides. The boys were doing their catcalling, but the girls were catcalling back. And if you've ever been along a sort of a Hispanic Spanish street, like say the nightclub strip, or where the uni kids go to listen to live music and get drunk, get laid, I suppose, then you see that same thing. The boys driving down the street in the car will call out, "Hey, puta," "Buenas piernas, puta," and then you get all this, and then the girls will call back, "Hey, filho de vaca, desgraciado." You get all this, so they're going back and forth, calling each other names and it's quite playful, it's quite silly, and everybody laughs and nobody means it, and so on. But the radical feminist types, they're going to, "Oh, no, that's not just playful banter. No, it's not that. It's Nazis, fascists, straight white fucking Nazi fascists oppressing these helpless little women." And that's how they're trying to depict it, which is, of course, is absurd and quite ludicrous. But anyway, were the utterances that both parties are making, were they lewd and vulgar? Yes, they were. Young people making these sort of things, calling out to each other, and some of it's you'd say maybe unnecessarily explicit, but is it meant in malice, or is it any intent to oppress or whatever? Now, the feminist argument is, well, as long as this sort of language is used, then women are not respected sufficiently, and if they're not respected sufficiently, then they can't be equal. That's sort of the ideology that they push. But when the reverse, well, what about the terrible things these young women say to the men? That they're sons of cows and things like. We're like, well, what about that? Oh, well, that doesn't matter because they're men. No. The women are allowed to say those things to men. Just men are not allowed to say things to women. Don't you get it, you fucking fascist? So that's the silliness of it. So once you do a bit of a drill down into the whole thing, you realise that not only is it a non-issue or a non-event, but it's also being misreported and trotted out as a propaganda narrative. Now, the other thing that they're trying to sort of backfill, if you like, into this this silly narrative, propaganda narrative they've created, which the entire international media establishment is going along with. Again, tightly coordinated and scripted campaign. The other thing they're trying to put into is, well, this shows lack of respect for women, and that in turn is demonstrated by the amount of rapes on campus. Every woman is getting raped 10 times a day by 50 million fascist Nazis. So there you go. There's the proof, and that shows that women aren't being respected. And of course, this is utter nonsense, and a complete invention. Can they find a situation of rape somewhere in some university in Spain? I'm sure they can. I mean, no one's disputing that you know, that somewhere you can find an instance of it if you try hard enough and look for long enough. Sure, you'll find it. The other thing that they're failing to mention is that the amount of instances of you know, whether it be rape or sexual assault or any sort of violence in the streets and around here, that it's nearly all, not completely all, but nearly all from people from North Africa, some of whom are there illegally, some of whom are there just as students. So the idea, they're trying to push the idea it's Spanish-born Spanish men that are the problem. It's not, but they're neatly skirting around this idea that it's Arabic people and Islamic people that are really young men that are the primary, if you know, 90% plus of the problem. So they're again a misrepresentation in the narrative. But it goes to show you just how much propaganda we're being fed, how many lies, and how we're being shepherded by the big tech companies, shepherded into seeing only the narrative that we're being, you know, the propaganda narrative, which is chock full of lies, A, and B, for example, missing out that the girls were catcalling the boys with just as furiously. That was conveniently left out. Not a word on that. It was all depicted as being exclusively one way and nothing else. So it just goes to show the extent of the lies that we're fed and the extent that we're plied with a propaganda narrative that is completely untrue and unrepresentative of any reality. You've been with Tassos today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.